My daughter threw the whole birthday cake in my face, right in the middle of her party, just because I refused to sign over the house. She screamed, "It's already mine." When I found out she and her husband were secretly planning to have me declared mentally unfit so they could take everything clean, they had no idea. The woman they thought had grown weak was quietly striking back. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end. And tell me, what city are you watching? My story from. I want to know how far it has traveled." The chandelier sparkled above the dining room, casting a warm glow on the marble floor. My late husband's house, my house, looked just as grand as always. Sloane insisted on a lavish celebration for her 35th. She said it was, quote, fitting for her future status. I stood near the dessert table, watching her twirl in the center of it all, soaking up the attention from her friends and business crowd. My heart clenched. She was still my daughter, but she didn't look like the woman I raised. Ever since she married Chadwick, that smooth-talking real estate guy, her ambition had gotten sharp. As the evening moved on, Sloane came toward me with that stiff smile I'd grown to dread. She held a leather-bound folder in one hand. "Mother," she purred sweetly, way too loud given how close we were. "Everyone's here. Why don't you make it official tonight? You've talked about transferring the house for months. Let's sign it." The room quieted. Heads turned. Phones came up. I froze, holding my champagne tighter. "Sloane, this isn't the time or place." Her smile twitched, then disappeared. "You always say that, Mother, but you're not getting any younger. Chadwick says it's best to handle these things while you're still capable." That one hit hard. My face went hot, but I kept my voice level. "We can discuss it another day." Her nose flared. The silence around us thickened. Chadwick stepped in behind her, his hand on her shoulder like a warning. Then it happened. Sloane reached for the cake, 3 layers, perfect roses, and shoved it into my face. The whole room gasped. "You selfish old woman," she screamed. This house should already be mine. Frosting dripped down my chin, cold and thick, while the cameras clicked and caught every awful second. The chandelier light danced across the marble, catching the same cruelty in her eyes I'd ignored for too long. The house, always the house. Never the years I spent keeping this family together after my husband died. Never the quiet sacrifice. Never the dignity it took to let them grow while I stayed behind. I finally spoke. My voice was calm, steady. "I said you would inherit it when the time was right." Sloane's lip curled. "And when would that be? When you finally dropped dead? When you're too senile to know where you are? Why delay the inevitable?" A gasp moved through the room like a wave. Chadwick put a hand on her shoulder, his way of trying to reel her in. But Sloane shook him off, lost in her rage. "You don't even need this place. Look at you. You barely leave your study. You live like a ghost already." Maybe those words would have hurt once. But now, I just felt tired. Not broken, not afraid. Just tired of pretending. Tired of smiling through the disrespect. I stood up straighter, wiped the frosting off with a napkin like it meant nothing. "Sloane," I said quietly, but each word hit like a stone. "If you truly believe you're entitled to something that does not yet belong to you, you'll get exactly what you deserve." And I walked away from the ballroom, leaving behind the whispers, the stares, and every false piece of that night. My heels echoed through the hallway as I made my way to the study, past the old portraits staring down like they knew something I didn't, my late husband's eyes among them. They had no clue who they were dealing with. Not yet. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, shutting out the noise, the gossip. The party still alive on the other side, my quiet refuge, my self-made cage. I leaned against the oak door and exhaled, steadying the shake in my hands. The silence was heavy, broken only by the slow tick of the grandfather clock. The laughter outside kept going. Glasses clinked. Music played like everything was fine. Like my own daughter hadn't just tried to drag me down in front of everyone, force my hand, take what I'd built. I walked over to the fireplace mirror. The streaks were still there. Wiped my face with a cool cloth, avoiding my reflection as long as I could. But I looked, and there I was, Miriam Langley, widow, matriarch, alone. How did it end up like this? The family portraits hung close by. Sloane was there, still just a teen in her riding clothes, her father's hand proud on her shoulder. She was always his favorite, his girl. I never minded. Back then, she was kind, thankful. But everything shifted after she married Chadwick. I never liked him, the way he looked around the house that first visit, like he was already measuring it for himself. He noticed the land more than he noticed my daughter. His questions, harmless on the surface, always circled back to money, deeds, value. I saw the ambition right away, but Sloane called it drive. She said he was sharp, focused. Now I see he was just cold and calculated. And now she is, too. The kettle's whistle cut through my thoughts. I poured a cup of chamomile. The porcelain clinked. As I set it down, I needed something to still me. I sat in my old chair and stared back at the wall of faces. Harrison's eyes still watching me. Steady, protective. What would you do, Harrison? What would you say to her? Nothing came back. Just the ticking clock and the sound of laughter from people who thought tonight would break me, shame me, back me into a corner. Thought love could be used like a weapon. I sipped my tea, the bitterness sharp. No, I'm not broken. I'm not finished. Not yet. The sunroom was already warm when she showed up the next morning. Sloane stood in the doorway, dressed with care, a pale pink blouse, no jewelry, hair loose like she was trying to look soft. Sorry, I wasn't buying it, Mother, she said gently. Can we talk? I pointed to the chair across from me. My tea was ready, 2 cups. I had seen this coming. She sat down, legs crossed like always, a little pause for effect. Then it started. I wanted to apologize for last night, she said, voice shaking just enough. It got out of hand. I didn't mean for things to escalate. I sipped my tea and left her hanging in the quiet. She shifted, uneasy. You have to understand, she went on, her voice slipping into that same smooth tone I knew too well. We're just worried about you, your health, how much you're handling. There it was. The angle. You've carried so much for so long, Mother. She reached for my hand. I let her take it, though every part of me wanted to pull away. But maybe it's time to let someone step in. You shouldn't have to carry all this weight by yourself anymore. Her husband's voice from last night kept looping in my head. You're not getting any younger. And what kind of help are we talking about? I asked, keeping my voice even and my eyes on her. She smiled. That same tight little smug smile she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. Chadwick and I have been talking to a few people, financial advisors, estate planners. We could take over for you, take the pressure off, deal with the paperwork, the property. There it was. The reason she showed up. I leaned back just a bit, still holding my cup. The property. Yes, she said quickly. We're not trying to take anything from you. We just want to protect it. For the family, for the future. You could relax, travel, enjoy your life, spend time with your friends. The way she pitched my surrender like it was some kind of gift made my stomach turn, like I was some kid being sweet-talked into handing over lunch money. I pushed out a soft smile. That's very kind of you, dear. I caught the flash of relief on her face. She thought I was giving in. But I've been running this house for over 40 years, I said. I think I can handle it a while longer. Her smile wavered. Her fingers curled tighter around the porcelain. Mother, we're just trying to think ahead. Chadwick has connections. We could make all of this easier. I set my cup down gently. You're very worried about me, Sloane. I can see that. She blinked, unsure where I was headed. Why don't we talk more about it later? I said lightly. But not today. I need some air. I stood. That was the end of that. For now. But the war had just kicked off. It wasn't even noon. When I heard it, I'd stepped into the hallway to grab a book from the library. The door to the downstairs office was cracked. I wasn't supposed to be home. Or so they thought. Their voices reached up the hall. Low, tense. We need to move faster, Chadwick, Sloane whispered. She's more stubborn than I thought. Chadwick snapped back. That's why we need Dr. Harlan. If we get her declared mentally unfit, that's it. We won't need her signature. No more delays. It'll go smoothly. My heart pounded, but I didn't move. And he's willing? Sloane asked. Of course. We've been funding his clinic for 2 years. He'll write whatever we need. There was a short pause, then Chadwick chuckled. The sooner we get the deed, the sooner we sell. With this market, we could clear $2 million by the end of the year. Wipe my debts clean. Sloane dropped her voice even more. And Mother won't have to worry anymore. Once she's declared incompetent, the court hands us full control. We'll put her in that luxury care place in Virginia. She'll be well taken care of. No more fights. The nerve. The straight-up arrogance nearly made me gasp. But I stayed frozen, my hand clamped around the bookshelf. I didn't make a sound. Not yet. Not until I had everything. Chadwick's tone went icy. Get the paperwork lined up before she backs out again, and keep her thinking we're doing this for her. Don't tip her off. Sloane let out a sigh. I can handle her. She still thinks I care. I stepped back from the door, slow and deliberate, making sure the wood floor didn't betray me with a creak. Once I reached the end of the hallway, I finally exhaled. They were trying to have me declared mentally unfit, my own daughter. For years I told myself, Sloane's selfishness was just youth, that she'd grow out of it. But this wasn't that. This was betrayal. I went back to the study, shut the door quietly behind me, and sat at my desk. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sharp, sudden clarity racing through me. They made one crucial mistake. They thought I was still some fragile old woman who needed looking after. They had no clue who they were dealing with. The next morning, I didn't give myself the comfort of anger. I knew better. Anger's useless unless you put it to work. What I needed was focus. I needed allies. I reached for the phone on my nightstand. The old receiver felt cool in my hand. My fingers hovered above the number, familiar as breath. Then I dialed. I hadn't spoken to Bernadette in months. Not out of distance, but because she understood when I needed space. She picked up on the second ring, her voice warm and steady as ever. Miriam, my word, it's been too long. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Bernadette, dear, do you have time for a private chat? Of course. Are you all right? I paused. Not quite. I could use your counsel. Her voice shifted. Firm now. Where shall we meet? Not here. Too many ears in this house. I glanced toward the hallway, the little cafe near St. Augustine's. Noon. I'll be there. The cafe was nearly empty when I got there. Just a couple of old men playing chess in the corner. I picked a window table. A few minutes later, Bernadette walked in, graceful as always, pearl earrings, tailored gray coat, eyes sharp as ever. She sat across from me, folded her hands. Tell me everything. I didn't hold back. I told her about the party, Sloane's visit, and most of all, what I'd overheard in the garden. Bernadette didn't say a word, just listened, her lips pressed thin as the story unrolled. When I finished, her face had gone cold. Careful, they're not just playing games anymore, I said. They're trying to erase me. Bernadette nodded, and fast. If they're already talking to a doctor willing to file for incompetency, you don't have much time. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, steadying myself in its warmth. I need to move before they do. Bernadette leaned in. You need evidence. Solid, clear, undeniable proof they're working to take away your rights. Quietly, carefully. You don't want them catching on too soon. I looked her in the eye. I was hoping you'd say that. For a second, her eyes softened, the years between us still alive in the look. You've always had a quiet strength, Miriam. But this calls for more than strength. This calls for precision. I gave her a nod. I'm ready. Bernadette exhaled, already switching into that sharp, no-nonsense mindset that once commanded courtroom after courtroom. You need someone who can dig around without raising any alarms. A private investigator. Someone who knows how to keep things quiet. I gave a faint smile. I might know a guy. Bernadette smiled too, her voice steady. Good, but don't forget. Play the part they're expecting. Frail, grateful, helpless. I've been underestimated my whole life. I said it evenly. I know how to wear that face. Bernadette reached across the table and laid her hand over mine. Then, let's make sure they regret it. Outside, the wind hinted that fall was on its way. Inside, for the first time in weeks, I felt something real. Control. 2 days later, I met Mr. Bellamy. We sat, tucked into the corner of a plain hotel lobby, just far enough from everyone else to not be overheard. He was exactly like Bernadette described. Low-key, calm, not showy. The kind of guy who listens first, talks second. I picked this hotel for a reason. It's out of the way. No one around who'd recognize me. He took a sip of his black coffee and glanced at the folder I gave him. Your friend filled me in a little, Mrs. Langley. But this, he tapped the folder. This connects a lot of dots. Inside were copies of recent financial records. Strange transfers Sloane made. Chadwick's and his business messes that somehow kept draining money. They're after my house, I said flat out. And they'll lie, say I'm not capable, whatever gets the job done. Mr. Bellamy gave a slow nod. It's happening more and more. Sadly, family sees a chance. The court sees an older parent and assumes they're dependent. Except I'm not. My voice came out harder than I meant. That's why you're here. He gave a small smile. Not warm, but respectful. You need proof. Something that shows intention, not just concern. He pulled a small device from his bag and handed it to me. Looked like a key fob voice recorder, he said. Legal for personal use in this state, as long as one person knows it's happening. That person is you. I turned it over in my hand. So tiny, so normal. But it could blow up their whole scheme. Record anything that feels off, he said. If they talk about plans, money, the doctor, whatever, let them speak. Keep cool. The more natural you act, the more they'll spill. And the doctor? I asked. I'll dig into him. If he's tied to your son-in-law, there's probably a paper trail. Payments, referrals, conflicts, there's always something. I just sat there for a second, staring at this man, a stranger, calmly stacking the first pieces of my defense. It wasn't how I ever pictured protecting my home this late in life. But here I was. And the cost? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He smiled again, just a hint of humor this time. Let's call it a family rate. Your judge friend already covered most of it. I let out a slow breath. My throat tightened with gratitude, but I kept it together. Thank you, I said. I'm not losing this house, Mr. Bellamy. Not to them. You won't, he said simply, as long as you're ready to fight. I left that hotel with the recorder tucked in my purse. My steps felt heavier than usual. Not from fear, just the weight of knowing everything had changed. The clock had started. They thought I'd back down. Instead, I'd just begun. A week later, with everything quietly bubbling under the surface, I sent the invite. Just a quick message through Sloane's assistant. A low-key dinner at home. Casual, comfortable, predictably. They said yes right away. That evening, they showed up all smiles, laying it on thick. Chadwick brought a pricey bottle of wine like a guy offering a gift to a shrine he was planning to bulldoze. Sloane leaned in to kiss my cheek like nothing had happened. Mother, you're looking well, she said, in that fake upbeat tone. She'd clearly been rehearsing. I gave her a sweet smile. Thank you, dear. I've been trying to take better care of myself, you know, less stress. Chadwick laughed as he put down the wine. That's exactly why we keep encouraging you to let us take care of the big stuff. And just like that, the pitch started. He couldn't wait 5 minutes to circle back. I led them to the dining room, where I'd made all their favorites. A quiet little reminder of who still ran this house. Roast beef, honey-glazed carrots, fresh-baked bread. The table shone under the soft light of the chandelier. We ate, we chatted. Sloane kept it breezy, talked about vacation plans, a new interior designer she was working with, some charity event she was chairing, but underneath it all was a steady hum, like they were easing me into something, keeping things smooth before they dropped the net. After dessert, Chadwick brought it up carefully. So, Mother, have you had a chance to think more about the transfer paperwork we discussed? I set my fork down, folded my napkin in my lap, and nodded gently. Yes, dear, I have. I let my voice shake just a touch. You're both so sweet to think about my well-being. Honestly, it's a bit much. I wouldn't even know where to begin with all those documents. Chadwick leaned in, his eyes lighting up like he smelled a wind. That's why we're here. We can walk you through it. You won't have to worry about a thing. Sloane jumped in, squeezing my hand. We want you to enjoy life, Mother. Free from all these complicated responsibilities. I lowered my eyes, blinking like I was trying not to cry. You're right. I guess it's only a matter of time before I start forgetting things like your father did near the end. The tiny flicker of triumph in Chadwick's face made my stomach turn. They really thought I was cracking. I touched Sloane's arm softly. But let's not rush, darling. I want to look through everything before I sign anything. You know your father always told me to be thorough. Chadwick kept smiling, but I caught the tension in his jaw. Of course, take your time. We'll have our attorneys send over the preliminary drafts. Sloane jumped in, and we'll make it really simple. You won't have to read a mountain of confusing legal stuff. I smiled, like it made me feel better. That's very thoughtful. We wrapped up with coffee and small talk. I packed up some leftover pastries for them to take home, like any mother trying to be nice to her kids. I watched them walk out to their car, Chadwick with his arm around Sloane's waist, and kept my soft smile on until their taillights faded down the driveway. Only after they were gone did I let my face go cold. They saw exactly what they wanted. A thankful old woman finally giving in to their careful little act. But they had no idea what was coming, and that made me dangerous. 3 days later, the letter showed up. It was delivered by courier, straight to my door, like they wanted to make it look official, urgent. The envelope was heavy, the kind of thick stock paper people use to prove they mean business, embossed with the name of some law firm I'd never heard of, probably one of Chadwick's buddies. I opened it without flinching, even though my hands were itching to shake. Inside was a full packet of paperwork, property transfers, legal documents, deed authorization, financial power of attorney. Everything was typed up, neat, like it came straight off an assembly line. All of it ready. All it needed was my signature. And there it was. Sloane's name already scrawled at the bottom. Chapter 2, the only space left blank was mine. A coldness spread through me, like frost sinking beneath my skin. They weren't asking for my permission anymore. They were betting on it. The nerve was unbelievable. They were ready to walk into a courtroom with those papers in hand and claim I'd agreed, that I was too stressed out to handle things, that I'd handed over control. I stared at the documents for a long time, letting the truth of what they were trying to do sink in deep. This wasn't just about greed. It was strategy. It was clean, quiet, theft, wrapped up to look like care. I set the papers aside and picked up my phone. Bernadette answered on the second ring. "It's escalated," I told her. My voice stayed even cold. I told her everything. The envelope, the names on the pages, the signature lines. Her silence stretched, loaded with fury. "They've already signed on your behalf?" she finally asked. "Yes. If they try to use those documents without my consent, that's forgery. They know that," I said flat. "That's why they're leaning on me so hard to sign before they try it." Bernadette let out a sharp breath. "Good, let them push. Don't go at them yet." Her voice dropped, crisp and focused. "The more pressure they apply, the more powerful your recordings become. And if they get sloppy enough to submit those documents early, that plays straight into our hands." I closed my eyes for a second, let her words steady me. "They're arrogant, Miriam. That's going to be their undoing." I opened my eyes again. The burn in my chest came back, quieter now, more focused. "Then let's make sure it is." Bernadette came to the house the next day. We sat in the sunroom, far from any help or any microphones my daughter might have thought to hide. She pushed her glasses down low on her nose and went through the legal packets slowly, carefully. The only sound was the soft turn of paper and the tick of that old clock in the corner. When she was done, she set the papers down and folded her hands. "They're moving faster than I expected." I nodded. "They think I'm ready to give up." Her mouth tightened. "There are weak spots in this, Miriam. Enough to fight back if it gets to court. But you and I both know this isn't about the law. This is about timing. They're betting on you being too scared, too tired, to ask the right questions." "They think I'm weak," I said quietly. "And I've let them believe it." Bernadette gave a small smile. "Good, you've handed them rope. And the more they use, the tighter it'll pull." I poured her some tea. My hands were steady. My voice stayed calm. "You think they suspect I'm onto them?" "Not yet," she said, her voice cool and clipped. "If anything, they probably see your hesitation as nerves. They're counting on that doctor signing off on your incompetency any minute now. Once that declaration's filed, they'll come for everything all at once. And when they do," I asked, "can we stop it?" Bernadette's eyes locked on mine, sharp and sure. "We won't wait to react. We'll strike first. That's why Mr. Bellamy's work matters so much. If we lock down the recordings, the money trails, and anything proving they leaned on me, we won't just stop them, we'll finish them." Her confidence steadied me. I'd managed this estate on my own for years, but legal battles weren't my ground. That's why I brought in Bernadette. That's why I trusted her. She leaned in just a bit. "Miriam, I need you to keep playing the part. The more they think you're caving, the bolder they'll get. Don't turn down their new requests. Outright, stall a little, nod along, act like it's too much. Let them think they've got you on the ropes." I gave a faint smile. "You do enjoy this more than you should." Bernadette laughed. "I spent 30 years watching people like your daughter strut into court, thinking the rules didn't apply to them. Entitlement always makes them sloppy." I stirred my tea slowly, lowering my voice. "I keep wondering, Bernadette, when did she stop seeing me as her mother? When did I turn into just another hurdle between her and what she wants?" Bernadette reached over and took my hand. "You stopped feeding her hunger, Miriam. And people like Sloane, they don't love anyone who tells them no. I swallowed but didn't look away. Then let's make sure the next no is the last one they ever want. Here, Bernadette gave my hand a small squeeze. It will be, I promise, that whole next week. I played the part down to the breath. The sweet old lady, the tired mom, grateful for the attention. I let them come by whenever they wanted. Let them deliver their well-rehearsed lines, their fake warmth disguised as care. One afternoon, we sat on the porch. The breeze was tugging at the lace tablecloths. My house gleamed behind them, and behind my calm smile, I watched them spin their web, fully convinced I was caught in it. Sloane poured my tea. Her new little ritual, like acting motherly, might rewrite the past. Mother, are you sure you don't want to sign before things get too complicated? You know, while you're still feeling clear-headed, Chadwick chimed in, right on cue. It'd save everyone a lot of trouble down the line. You wouldn't want the courts involved. They tend to make a mess of things. I took a sip, keeping my tone light. Of course, sweetheart. But I'd feel better running it past my financial advisor, just to be sure. I caught the flicker in Chadwick's eyes. He didn't love that answer, but he still thought he had the upper hand. Oh, of course, Sloane jumped in quickly, smoothing the edges. Take your time, Mother. We only want what's best. The recorder hidden behind my chair picked up every word. They were pushing, trying to corner me, trying to sell urgency like I was too fragile to make sound choices. That's why they kept circling back, always dropping hints about my slipping mind. Every time they said it, every time they slipped it in, it became stronger proof, and I let them. I even acted confused once, pretending not to remember which file they'd asked me to sign. Sloane leaped at the chance to help. Chadwick corrected me like I was a kid fumbling with her homework. All of it, caught on tape. Every smug look, every polite little threat wrapped in fake concern. The game was clear now. Let them think they were closing the gap. Let them feel like the win was within reach. The longer the rope, the sharper the snap when it tightens. That night, long after Sloane had left and the house had settled back into its deep, familiar quiet, I walked into the library. The fire crackled low in the hearth, throwing flickering shadows across the bookshelves. I stood in front of the tall bookcase for a while, running my fingers along the worn spines until I found them. Harrison's journals. 3 thick, leather-bound volumes, aged but cared for. He'd kept them up until the final stretch of his life. I brought them over to the reading chair and opened the first one. His handwriting was steady and clear, exactly as I remembered. March 17th. Sloane's ambition worries me. She's clever, yes, but too easily dazzled by wealth. Chadwick encourages it. I see it in the way he flatters her, always suggesting she deserves more. I fear where this path may lead once I'm gone. I read that line again, letting the words sink into me like cold water. Harrison had seen it coming, even back then. June 2nd. I must talk to Miriam again about securing proper legal protections. The house is in both our names, but I worry what Chadwick may attempt later. Miriam trusts too easily where family is concerned. She always believes people will choose love over greed. I pray she's right, but I must prepare as though she's not. I closed my eyes. He had tried to warn me. I kept flipping through the pages, the dates crawling slowly toward the year he passed. His writing got shakier near the end, but the message stayed the same. December 4th. If Miriam ever faces them alone, I hope she remembers this. Quiet does not mean weak. Calm does not mean powerless. Patience wins wars. His words landed heavy in my chest. I ran my hand along the page, like touching him one more time. I had stayed quiet for years, for Sloane's sake, for the sake of keeping things from exploding, but that silence had turned toxic. And now, finally, something stronger was rising beneath the grief. Not anger, but resolve. I didn't care about losing this house. I was done losing myself. At the back of the journal, I found one last note, scribbled like a final instruction. If they ever try to take what we built, don't beg, don't plead, show them who you are. I took a slow breath. My hands stopped trembling. My thoughts lined up. They thought I was soft. They thought time had worn me down into something breakable. But they never knew where my strength really lived. Harrison did. I placed the journals back on the shelf and smoothed out my blouse as I stood. Thank you, my love. I whispered into the room. Now, I knew exactly what had to be done. The war wasn't on the horizon anymore. It had already begun. Mr. Bellamy called me 2 days later. Mrs. Langley, he said, his tone steady, but with that quiet edge that meant something was coming. I believe you'll want to hear what I've found. I met him again at the Carlton Hotel, same corner booth, same low music playing in the background. This time, I brought no tea, no small talk, just focus. He slid a slim folder across the table. Your son-in-law's situation is far more precarious than you may have realized. I opened it. His findings were crisp, well organized. Account statements, real estate development contracts, loan records, but every single page said the same thing: desperation. The Ridgeview project, I asked. He nodded. They're bleeding money. Chadwick went way overboard with the project. He's leveraged every single asset they've got, even borrowed from private lenders, not just banks. The kind of loans with sky-high interest rates, backed by silent investors who won't blink before pulling the plug if there's a slip. I sifted through the paperwork, my stomach tightening. If Ridgeview goes under, they'll lose everything. The house, the cars, even their personal savings. And that would leave my estate as the only safety net they have left. Exactly, he said, leaning in a little. That's why Chadwick's leaning so hard on Sloan. If they can lock down full control of your property before the whole thing crashes, they'll turn it around for a fast sale. Quick cash. They're not trying to protect you, Mrs. Langley. He paused. They're trying to stay afloat. I shut the folder slowly, letting it all settle. They've already lined up a potential buyer, Bellamy added. A developer who plans to tear the place down and split the land. The paperwork's all set to go as soon as your name's off the title. My stomach twisted at the thought. Not just the house, our house, the one Harrison built with his own hands, the gardens he planted, the library he designed, gone, flattened for profit. But under the sting, something settled in. Clarity. They're moving fast because they're scared, I said quietly. They know they're running out of time. Desperation always leads to mistakes, and you're giving them just enough rope to hang themselves, Bellamy said. I looked him straight in the eye. I want every detail documented, every call, every meeting. You'll get it, he said. We're already tracking Chadwick's financial steps, quietly recording conversations between him and his people. He's starting to slip. I let myself smile. Sharp, bitter, and Sloan, still playing the good daughter, but she's cracking. Chadwick's fear is spilling into her now, and she's not great at hiding it. I leaned back, my mind already working out the next moves. Then we wait. Let them keep pushing. Yes, Bellamy nodded. The closer they think they are, the more careless they'll get. We got up and left separately, like always. Outside, the crisp autumn air hit me. The wind was stronger now, colder. But I stood taller than I had in years. I'd been their quiet, compliant mother for so long. The one they assumed would give in eventually, but I wasn't giving in. I was holding back, and soon, they'd understand the difference. The night I made my move was quiet. No drama, no fluff, just steady hands and a clear mind. The documents were laid out on the heavy oak desk in Bernadette's office. The air carried the scent of old paper and polished wood. A notary sat to the side, flipping through every page with care, calm and focused. Bernadette stood behind me, grounded and solid. This setup is bulletproof, Miriam. They won't touch a single piece of it once it's filed. I nodded. Just as we planned. The Langley family. Irrevocable trust. Every last asset. The house, the land, the investments. All locked in under legal protection. Completely out of Lillian Chadwick's reach. The trust would protect everything, not just from them, but from anyone else who might try to take advantage of what they called my weakness ever again. The notary slid the final page across the table, his pen resting gently on top. Signature here, Mrs. Langley. I didn't pause. My hand moved steady and sure as I signed my name right across the line. Miriam Augusta Langley. The notary sealed it with a quiet click and handed the finished stack to Bernadette. She tucked it into a thick leather folder, her face calm, satisfied. It's done, she said softly. Effective immediately. You're the sole trustee. No backup. No changes unless I say so. I let out a slow breath that carried years of quiet fear. No court can reverse this. Not unless you give them permission. They'd have to prove fraud, coercion, or mental incapacity before today's signing, she said with confidence. And with your beautifully timed confusion, we've got video, written records, and witnesses showing you've been clear and sharp. This whole time, a small smile pulled at the corner of my mouth. They thought I'd been slipping. And the whole time I nodded along with their plans. I was just pulling the walls in tighter. Bernadette smiled back, eyes lit with a quiet fire. You handled this better than most lawyers I know, Miriam. It was never a game to me, I said. It's my home. She shut the folder and tapped it once. Now we wait. As soon as they file for guardianship, we move. We show the court exactly who they are. And believe me, Chadwick's money trail will hit a lot harder in court than whatever lies they cooked up about your health. The notary stood, nodded politely, and stepped out, leaving us in silence. I sat back as the clock ticked on the wall, letting it all sink in. For months, I'd played along. I let them feed me fake concern, fake kindness, fake worry. They thought I was done. They thought the house already belonged to them now. Not only would they never touch it, they were about to be exposed for exactly who they were. I looked over at Bernadette.com and steady next to me. Let's see how brave they are when the papers land, I said quietly. Bernadette smiled, her eyes cold and clear. Oh, they'll come running, and they won't even see it coming. Outside, the leaves scraped against the iron gates that sealed off the estate. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable. I sent out one last invitation. No pretense tonight, no tea service, no soft voices or polite dances. Just one request. I'd like to review the documents together before signing. Please bring Chadwick. They showed up right on time, just like I knew they would, too eager, too sure of themselves. Sloane wore that polished, practiced confidence I'd seen at the party, the kind that used to shake me. But not tonight. Chadwick stood beside her, calm and smug, like he could already taste the win. We met in the parlor. The fireplace burned behind me. They sat across the coffee table. The trust papers, those they didn't know about, sat locked in my study just down the hall. Sloane smiled her rehearsed smile. Mother, you look beautiful tonight, ready to go over the paperwork. I smiled right back, calm and warm. Actually, I thought we'd start with something else. Chadwick's brow creased. Something else. I reached beside me and set a small black recorder on the table. You might remember this. I pressed play. Their voices came through loud and sharp. The recording from the garden, weeks ago, spilled out word for word. If we wait, we risk her finding other counsel. Dr. Harlan's agreed to handle the evaluation. Once she rules me unfit, you get full legal control. Fine, go ahead. Sloane went pale. Chadwick's jaw clenched like stone. I let it run a little longer, then shut it off. The silence afterward pressed in from all sides. I've played a lot of roles, for you too, I said quietly. A mother, a safety net, maybe even a fool. But one thing I've never been is helpless. Sloane was the first to speak, voice tight. Mom, that conversation was completely taken in full context. I cut in and legally recorded in my own home. Chadwick tried to take back the room. You don't get the spot we're in. We were trying to protect the estate. No, I said, voice calm. You were trying to cover your own mess. Ridgeview's sinking. Chadwick, your creditors are circling. And you looked at me. This house was your last card to play. Sloane shook her head, her voice starting to crack. You don't know what you're saying. I leaned in just slightly, my voice steady, almost kind. I know it all. The off-the-books loans, the hidden accounts, the pending deal to sell this place. You've been busy behind my back. They didn't move, didn't speak. I let the silence stretch, made them sit with the weight of everything falling apart. As of last week, I said, every inch of this estate, every asset, has been moved into a protected trust, an irrevocable trust. You have nothing. No claim, no future payout. Chadwick cracked first. Anger slipped through the mask he'd kept so tight. You can't do that. You're not mentally competent. I met his eyes, voice soft. That was the plan, wasn't it? Call me incompetent. Pay off a doctor to sign away what you couldn't take. I let the words hang, then dropped my voice lower. You were wrong. Sloane broke then. The tears started pouring. Voice desperate now. Mom, please, we didn't mean it. We thought. I shook my head, kept my voice, steady but firm. No, Sloane, you thought I was weak. And now I see exactly who you both are. The air turned heavy. They didn't know yet, but what was coming next was worse. I let the silence stretch again. Long enough for Sloane's sobs to fade into little whimpers. Long enough for Chadwick to start plotting an escape that didn't exist anymore. Then I laid down the last piece, quiet but final. I've already reported everything. Chadwick's head snapped up. What? His voice cracked for the first time. Sloane's face twisted in horror. Mom, you called the cops. I looked straight at them. No hate, not even anger left. Just the steady calm of someone who'd finally stepped all the way into her power. Yes, I didn't raise my voice. I turned in the recordings, the financials, every single file Mr. Bellamy pulled. You didn't just try to manipulate me. You broke the law. You plotted to have me declared legally incompetent for money. That's elder abuse. And that comes with real charges. Chadwick shot out of his seat, pacing like an animal with no way out. You don't know what you've done. No, Chadwick. This time, I kept my tone clear and even. For the first time, I know exactly what I've done. The knock hit the front door, hard, slicing through everything like a knife. They froze. Then another knock, louder. Lillian, waiting in the hallway, opened the door. 2 uniformed officers walked in, followed by a detective in plainclothes.com. Professional, all business, Mrs. Langley. The detective asked politely. We're here about your complaint. I stood up from my chair, steady. Yes, detective. They're right here. I nodded toward Chadwick and Sloane. Chadwick's face drained. You can't be serious. You can't have us arrested over this. The detective moved in, voice steady but firm. Mr. Anderson, you're being detained for questioning on suspicion of fraud, attempted financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. As the officer started reading his rights, Chadwick's protests turned frantic. You can't prove anything. She's twisting everything. The detective picked up the recorder from the table. We've got hours of your own words. They'll do just fine. Sloane fell apart. She dropped to her knees beside me, grabbing at my hand. Mother, please, please don't do this. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared. Chadwick made me. I looked down at her. I didn't pull away, but I didn't comfort her either. You made your choices, Sloane. You had chances to stop. You didn't. Tears ran down her face as the officers gently lifted her up and cuffed her. Outside, a few neighbors had started gathering at the edge of the driveway, whispers already floating, faces in windows, phones out, watching them fall. The detective turned back to me. We'll keep you informed, Mrs. Langley, your lawyer. We'll get full copies of all statements. Thank you, detective, I said, calm. They led them out, Chadwick shouting, Sloane crying. I stood still, hands folded, taking in the sharp air drifting through the open front door. For years, they circled this house like vultures. Tonight, their own greed brought them down. The front lawn blinked in cold blue light. I stood at the top of the steps, still, with a strange sense of peace. The neighbors had come fast, just like I knew they would. Mr. and Mrs. Dalton from next door were by their gate, whispering behind their hands. Down the street, the Wood stood at their mailbox, their teenager filming everything. The Ridley twins leaned out from their upstairs balcony, eyes wide. This wasn't just talk. This was a full-blown scandal. The golden daughter and her charming husband hauled out of the very estate they used to brag about, better than anything the neighborhood book club ever dreamed up. Chadwick's voice echoed down the drive as they loaded him into the cruiser. This is a mistake. This is all lies. You'll regret this. But his voice had shrunk, strained. Sloane, sobbing, barely able to walk, was helped into the second car. Her mascara ran down her cheeks, staining the expensive white blouse she probably picked for what she thought would be a victory meeting. I stood tall, hands folded like I was greeting guests at a garden party, instead of witnessing their public downfall. Lillian came up beside me, her voice quiet. Want me to close the door, ma'am? Not yet, I said. Let them see. She nodded, no questions needed. For years, I let my silence be mistaken for weakness. Tonight, the whole neighborhood saw just how wrong they were. The detectives came back over just as the cruises rolled off. We'll keep you posted as things move forward, Mrs. Langley. Their financial records are pretty extensive. This might take a while. I've got nothing but time, detective, I said quietly. He gave me a respectful nod and walked off. The gate closed behind them with a slow, heavy hum, sealing the estate again. The neighbors' whispers faded as the show ended, but I knew they'd chew on this story for months. I didn't care. I looked at Lillian. You can close the door now. She did, soft, careful, locking it with a quiet click. The house let out a long breath into stillness. I stood in the foyer a moment, taking in the emptiness. No more staged visits, no more phony concern, No more quiet manipulations dressed up as love. For the first time in years, the house felt like it was mine. Completely, unquestionably, their fingerprints gone. I walked into the parlor and sat where Sloane had begged me not long ago. My teacup was still there, untouched, going cold. I took a sip now, letting the warmth settle in. It didn't feel like triumph. It didn't even feel like relief. It was something quieter, freedom. The house was quiet again, not empty, quiet. There's a difference. Empty is hollow and sharp, like something important left and took the warmth with it. Quiet just means no one's screaming anymore. The morning after their arrest, I woke up before sunrise. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I could. Deep, uninterrupted sleep. No second guessing, no footsteps in the hallway, no voices murmuring behind closed doors. Just me, the ticking clock, and the steady sound of my own breath. My first breath as a free woman in my own home. I sat at the edge of the bed and watched the light creep in through the lace curtains. The house felt different. Not heavier, not haunted, just honest, like it had finally exhaled with me. Downstairs, Lillian had already started the coffee. She didn't say much, but her smile lasted longer than usual. She placed the paper on the table without a word. I didn't have to look. I already knew. Prominent couple arrested in alleged elder abuse, fraud scheme. There they were. Front page, their wedding photo right above the fold. Sloane in her designer gown, Chadwick with his empty smile. The headline didn't mention my name, just an elderly relative, as if I were some shadow in the background of their glittering downfall. That was fine. Let the papers guess. I sipped my coffee slow. Let the bitterness settle on my tongue. The taste of something earned. Bernadette called mid-morning. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the edge of satisfaction under it. They've been processed. Bail's been denied for now. The DA's office thinks they have enough to push for full prosecution. They do, I said. And your trust is airtight, she added. They'd have better luck stealing the sun. I chuckled. Dry, let them try. At least it'd be honest theft. We talked logistics, court dates, press questions, next steps. When we hung up, I didn't linger. I didn't gloat. I stood, walked to the sunroom, and opened every window. Fresh air rushed in like something sacred. I let it hit me full in the face. The whole estate still bore their fingerprints. Fake orchids in the parlor, gold-rimmed dinnerware for show, ugly modern paintings Sloane insisted made the place relevant. I spent the rest of the day undoing them. By sunset, the orchids were gone. The dishes packed in boxes. The paintings propped against the back gate, waiting for someone to haul them off. And my house, our house, was slowly breathing again. That night, I opened Harrison's last journal, not to read, just to hold. He didn't leave instructions for revenge. He left reminders of who I'd been before I gave everything away in the name of love. I didn't cry. The crying came the next night. It hit me in the kitchen. I was slicing peaches for a pie. I wasn't even sure I wanted when I looked down and saw my mother's paring knife in my hand, the one she gave me when I married Harrison. I hadn't touched it in years. And that's when it hit. Everything. All at once. The betrayal. The fear. The guilt for not seeing it sooner. The shame of pretending for so long that I didn't notice my own daughter turning into something cold and calculating. I leaned over the counter and sobbed into my arms. Not loud, not desperate, just deep and full. It only lasted a few minutes. But when it passed, something was different, lighter. I wasn't crying for what I'd lost. I was crying for what I'd allowed, for what I'd survived. The next morning, I called the contractor, told him I was ready to renovate the sunroom. New windows, new floors. I even asked him to tear down the trellis Sloane installed, the one she said was inspired by European retreats. It always felt like a lie. Now I wanted something honest. Wood, warm, nothing expensive, nothing that pretended. Weeks passed like that, quietly. The press backed off once the financial details hit court. Chadwick's name turned toxic in Rio estate circles. Sloane was being formally investigated for falsifying documents and coercion. I let the lawyers handle it. I stayed home. I read. I walked the grounds. I took tea in the library with Lillian and didn't speak a word unless I wanted to. I even joined the garden club again. I hadn't stepped foot in that group since Harrison passed. This time, I walked in taller. Some of the women stared, others whispered. I didn't mind. Let them talk. One afternoon, Mrs. Whitaker pulled me aside after the meeting and whispered, "We always wondered when you'd finally show them who really owned that house." I just smiled. I was waiting for the right time. It was true. They say, when you go through something like this, family betrayal, public scandal, you either shrink or you shed. I'd spent years shrinking. But now I was peeling back the parts that never fit. I had no interest in rebuilding the past. I was building something new. I changed the locks, canceled the old alarm codes, rewrote the deed with just my name. No daughter, no in-laws, no contingency. Just Miriam Langley, sole trustee of her own future. The final piece came on a rainy Tuesday. Bernadette delivered the last court documents herself. Sloan and Chadwick had pled guilty to avoid trial. Deferred sentences, restitution, community service. It wouldn't undo what they did, but it would cost them years and reputations. Moving out of state, Bernadette said. Good, I said. They won't be back. She hesitated before speaking again. Sloan asked if you'd be willing to see her. Just once. No press. No pretense. I stirred my tea. Slow. Tell her, I wish her healing. But I'm not part of it. Bernadette nodded. That was that. That night, I took my tea out to the garden. The roses were blooming again. White, wild, a little crooked. Just how I liked them. I walked among them slowly, barefoot, feeling the damp stone under my feet. No one watching. No one taking notes. No one waiting to twist my choices. Just me, Dot, and the sound of rain on old earth. I was 71 years old. And for the first time in my life, I was free. Spring came late that year. The flowers bloomed shyly, one by one, like they weren't sure if they'd be welcomed. But the air softened. The nights grew shorter. And the house, my house, no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like a place where something might begin again. I didn't rush it. Some mornings, I stayed in bed longer than usual, watching the sunlight crawl across the ceiling like an old friend too shy to knock. I didn't feel guilty for resting. For the first time in decades, I wasn't holding up anyone else's life. The invitations started trickling in again. Charity boards, luncheons, even a speaking engagement at the Women's Leadership Circle downtown. I declined all of them, not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to prove. I was never chasing a title. I was building something quiet, something sacred, and I'd nearly let them destroy it with ink and lies and pretty words dressed up like love. So no, I didn't care about their circles anymore, but I did care about what came next. The idea came while I was pruning the roses. A storm had snapped one of the trellises, the last one I hadn't taken down. I stood there, clippers in hand, staring at the way the wood had split clean down the center. It wasn't violent, just inevitable. Rotten things always fall apart when you stop pretending they're strong. That night, I opened a blank notebook. Not Harrison's, not mine, something new, and I wrote one sentence. This house is meant to hold more than ghosts. I didn't know what it meant at first, but the idea started growing. By the following week, I'd cleared out the guest wing, 3 bedrooms, a sitting room, and a private bath. I left the rest of the house untouched, just that one wing, and I made a few quiet calls. 2 months later, the first woman arrived. Her name was Diane, mid-40s, sharp eyes, gentle voice. She carried her entire life in 2 duffel bags and a court folder thick with papers. Divorce, eviction, silence from the friends who said they'd stay. I didn't ask her to explain. I just gave her the room at the end of the hall and told her. The kettle boiled at 7. The second woman came a few weeks after Anna Younger, a nurse who'd lost her job for reporting misconduct. She had no family nearby, no place that felt safe. By the end of summer, there were 4 women in the house. No contracts, no rent, just a quiet agreement. We heal here, and then we build. The neighbors gossiped, of course. Miriam Langley, once the grand matriarch of the avenue, now running what they whispered might be a halfway house. Let them guess. We were something stranger, something softer, a place for women who'd been silenced, rewritten, pushed out of the stories they built. Women like me. I didn't mother them. That wasn't the point. But I listened when they spoke, and I let them be still when they couldn't. Some mornings, we sat on the porch and watched the mail truck come and go like AMETRONOME. Other days, we painted fences, scrubbed windows, hauled branches like farmhands. The house became something living again, not grand, not elegant, but alive. The town paper sent a reporter by in early fall. Young, polite, clearly expecting something tragic or scandalous. I told her we weren't a charity, and we weren't a shelter. We're a house for rebuilding, I said simply. She asked if I wanted to be quoted. I shook my head. Let the house speak for itself. The article came out under the headline, "Widow's Estate Quietly Becomes Sanctuary for Women Starting Over." The calls came again. Volunteers, donors, church ladies with casseroles, even the mayor's office offering a plaque. I took none of it. This place wasn't about recognition. It was about redemption. And I wasn't done yet. One crisp October afternoon, I walked the perimeter of the land. The roses were fading. Leaves drifted down like little farewells. And I found myself stopping at the stone bench by the edge of the garden, the one Harrison placed under the birch tree the year after Sloane was born. I sat there for a long time, and when I stood, I made one more decision. I changed my will, not because of fear, but because of clarity. The house would remain a trust, but now it had a mission. It would never be sold, never be redeveloped, never again become a prize to fight over. It would belong to the women rebuilding, always. I handed the updated papers to Bernadette the next morning. She read them carefully, lips tight. "You're sure?" I nodded. This was never meant to die with me. Let it outlive every name attached to it. She didn't argue. She just nodded once. Firm. "You did it, Miriam." I smiled. "No," I said softly. "I started it." That night, the wind came in strong. It rattled the shutters, lifted the corners of the rugs, but I didn't fear it. The house stood solid, not because of me, but because I finally let it breathe. And as I turned out the lights, one by one, moving from room to room, I didn't say goodbye. I said, "Welcome." Because the story didn't end in betrayal. It ended in becoming, and I wasn't alone anymore. Now, after calmly looking back at everything that happened, I still never thought the greatest pain of my life would come from the very daughter I poured all my love and sacrifice into raising. But now I understand. Family, if not guarded with gratitude and honesty, can become the sharpest blade. Stay clear-headed. Know who's standing beside you, whether it's out of love or for gain. Don't be afraid to hold on to your strength until the very end. And never let anyone rewrite your life story just because you've grown old. I used to stay silent, used to bend, used to believe that blood ties would somehow find their way home. But the truth is, love doesn't mean blindness. So if you were me, if your own child had planned to strip you of everything, your honor, your property, your freedom, what would you do? I truly want to know. And I pray that God grants you the light to never stand where I've stood. But if you must, may you stand as firmly as I did.